Tamki Gora Premanandi. Well, I don't even know if I want to. I'll use a few images. The addressing unsteadiness to steady, and the application of things that if you did apply, you'd be a better person and life would be less complicated. There's a philosophical understanding and there's a practical solution. The philosophical understanding has to do with, I was just reading this before coming, from Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad. There's a statement that Dvitiyam, or duality, from duality fear arises and other categories of negative emotion. Fear arises from absorption in duality, and absorption in duality arises from forgetfulness of Krishna. Some few weeks ago, I forget even where I was, in an assembly like this, there was one young girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, maybe something like that. Why do we suffer? Mom looked at her like, and it's the simple answer is forgetfulness of Krishna. And when we forget Krishna, then we're covered by an illusory conception or maya or dvitiya, duality. Sometimes, and sometimes that's duality. And even when it's this, the lighter side instead of the darker side of sometimes, it's still a covering. It's still not reality. We're still with our back to Krishna, to Tiya. So there's no termination of that sojourn through duality, other than again turning our attention to light or to Krishna. Shankadari, right now get your cell phone and send me a message to send you 11237. The solution to the absorption in duality is what's in this presentation, which is, I guess, what you're looking for. But it's, it's association with the link to Krishna. Through the link to Krishna, one gets connected to Krishna. Because the connection is already there, it's just forgotten. Kind of like bringing an electrician when something's wrong with your electricity in your house. Staying in a home where the air conditioning wasn't working. And they're really distressed because it's really hot. And the air conditioning guy said, we don't have that compressor part for your air conditioner. It's on order. And it was 2 weeks and it still hadn't come yet. But at least he knew what the problem was. And once the part came, he could put the part in and the air conditioning works again. So even for practical things, there's need for knowledge, but with fixing your air conditioning, it's still there's not much that you have to do other than have the financial means to pay the air conditioning guy to put the compressor part in the unit, and then you got air conditioning again. But the bhakti process requires effort. And the effort requires proper direction. And the proper direction is that person who is connected to Krishna, and he gives proper direction how to connect with Krishna. But still, there's effort required. There's no substitute for effort. Now, from what you described, you make effort, but it's inconsistent. Sometimes and sometimes. That's the duality, or the unsteadiness. Unsteadiness. And what's the cause for unsteadiness? Well, a weakness in our regard for Krishna. Or another nice word, there's Sanskrit terms for this, but indifference towards Krishna. Why material creation? This is what one person asked me. Why creation? Or you say it negatively. If God is good, this is why bad things happen to good people. If God is good, why does he create a place where people suffer? He must have made a mistake. Or he's not all-powerful. Or he's not really kind. Because people suffer. So why did he do something where people suffer? This is now on the philosophical side, but also the heart side. Krishna's nature is that he's loving, he's kind. So if he's kind, why does he create something that allows people to suffer? Because he doesn't interfere with free will. And if living entities want to enjoy separately from him, he doesn't interfere with that. He gives the facility by which they can try to be enjoyers separately from him. But it never really satisfies. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dushparena analena sha. It burns like fire, anala. There's no satisfaction there. There's a French word that in English it's pronounced, I just learned this the other day, ennoi. It's E-N-N-O-I. Look it up. Write it down. Look it up. E-N-N-O-I. You have something? You have your little handheld device. Put it on your little, make a note for yourself. E-N-N-O-I. It means indifference. And with indifference, there's boredom. No matter, there's not sufficient attraction for the spiritual, sufficient detachment from the material. Sufficient detachment from the material. It's not like it's not sufficient attraction for the spiritual. Not sufficient attraction. And spiritual means relationship with Krishna. So the relationship, the signal is weak. The Krishna signal is weak. The connection isn't strong. If the connection was strong, then when you heard, this will help you, then you do it because you heard. And there's sufficient desire for the spiritual. But when there's weak desire for the spiritual, and there's indifference for the material, then you can be drawn to the material. It's just by default. Because on the soul platform, we want to enjoy. So really, that philosophically, or relationally, it strengthened the relationship with Krishna. And whatever it is that the bhakti process is all about, strengthening our relationship with Krishna. And the primary method is sound. It's hearing. And there's different degrees of hearing and qualities of hearing, but hearing where it enters the heart. And it enters the heart when this, Krishna creates situations for people to try to enjoy, and the end result is there isn't satisfaction. And they tried it another way and there isn't satisfaction. And people are very stubborn in the mode of ignorance. It's like donkeys. They just keep doing the same thing and doing the same thing and doing the same thing and doing the same thing. Do it a little different, but it's the same thing. Mode of ignorance keep people doing the same thing. And a little light can go on that says, And those points, I mean, what the word that you expressed is saying that it's not working. And it's not the process, it's something inside, it's not something outside. The knowledge is proper, the means of application of the knowledge is proper, the teachings and the teachers and everything is that good fortune has come to you. There are many people that don't have that good fortune. So let me feel grateful in my heart. I have good teachings and good teachers. Now I need to strengthen my hankering, not just so that, big difference, not just so that I can get on the lighter side of duality, but I can go beyond duality. That is, to go to Krishna. You with me? Yeah. Because the teaching says, even if you, Brahma Bhuvana Loka, even you go to Brahma Loka, therein rebirth and death take place, so don't aspire for the temporary. We aspire for the temporary. We want a better situation. We want relief from the dissatisfaction. But it's all, that it's still on the me platform and it's still on the temporary platform. What Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Ashashvatam. It's limited and temporary. So, that's not the solution. Our tendency is to do the same things again. And the solution is not to do the same things again and go up and then come back down and go up and come back down and go up and come back down. The solution is to go on the other side. And the means for that is sound, principally, and then through sound relationships with the source of that sound, the teachers and the teachings. The teachings is the sound, and it connects you to the teachers, and the teachers are connecting you to Krishna. So you hold on to that rope, and hold on, and you can climb a little bit, but all you really have to do is hold on, and the rope will pull you from that up and down, the unsteady state of consciousness, through purification and through elevation. That purification means the negative stuff is diminished, and the purification means the good stuff, the transcendental consciousness, is restored. Now, to do that, it takes faith, and it takes, something more than indifference or complacency. Now, from the way you described, you want things to change. You don't want it to stay. So, it's still me-centered. But the bhakti process is to make things Krishna-centered. And so we have, deity worship and practices, all kinds of practices that gradually and gently help one come to Krishna-centered. And that's a from the heart application, Krishna-centeredness. So I'm going to go a little bit to what you see on the screen is 3 bars. And just to keep it in simple terms, sense gratification, what's another way of saying sense gratification is fruitive activity. Fruitive activity is passion. So according to Bhagavad Gita, The mode of goodness, those who live their lives in the mode of goodness, they go upwards, the higher planetary regions. Urdhvam gachanti sattva sta. Urdhvam gachanti sattva sta. And this earthly realm is the place of passion, fruitive activity. Madhye tishtanti rajasa. Adho gachanti tamasa. Lower, middle, and upper. The advice of Bhagavad Gita is don't just go for upper, but we're in this middle. The advice is to go transcendental. But in the middle range, it's fruitive activity. It's doing something to get something. It's about me. I'm at the center. Am I happy yet? You know, that slogan, are we enjoying it? Are we having fun yet? It's about me and what my definition of what fun is or what happiness is. It's all on the temporary passion level. There's another mode of goodness, happiness, and there's transcendental happiness. So if we're in this realm, it's to do something to get something, fruitive activity. To get something is, it satisfies my senses. That's happiness. My senses are pleased, that's happiness. Now, instructions from spiritual teachings says, in principle, like there's lots of them, but this is limited and temporary. It's not going to bring satisfaction. The platform of sense gratification is not. Can we go back to what's on the screen, please? Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Just look at this. That's good. Just leave it. I don't want to just hover in that what's in it for me status. I want to go to the higher consciousness platform. And, you know, it can start with molding your life towards activities that are in goodness, but the objective of those towards goodness, spiritual teaching says that's not sufficient. You need transcendence. You need to go on the other side of duality, because good and bad is part of duality. Right and wrong, happy, sad, pleasure, pain, honor, dishonor. It's all part of duality. And the real shelter is beyond duality, not within the higher ranges of duality. It's still duality. It's still going to be up and down, unsteady. So spiritual teachings are needed, and spiritual teachings come from spiritual teachers. And spiritual teachers teach teachings that come from Krishna, from the Supreme Pure. Sarvagya, one who knows everything, is Krishna. And those instructions are given through spiritual master. So one gets that. Now, here's something that Prabhupada said. I'll repeat it twice. One of the essential primary duties of a spiritual master is to thoroughly instruct the disciple about the abject futility of trying to find happiness through fruitive activity. And that's this, you know. Fruitive activity means get something. Do something to get something. That means the senses go, ah. Sense satisfaction. Abject futility. That's this Madhye Tishtanti Rajasa platform. One will stay. Not even necessarily in a human form of life, but in this middle planetary region. Fruitive activity. So I'll say it again. One of the primary duties of a spiritual master is to thoroughly instruct the disciple the abject futility of finding happiness through fruitive activity. It has to be elevated consciousness. So when there's guidance from Guru, then one's energy or intention in life starts to shift. Besides, I'm happy, I'm not happy. I'm enjoying, I'm not enjoying. I'm feeling good, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling contentment and feeling behind even that contentment is dissatisfaction, because it's not what ultimate satisfaction is. So guidance from Guru carries one to a higher state of consciousness. In that higher state of consciousness, there's some other evaluation of what real happiness is, and a lifestyle of greater happiness. And gradually it leads one to self-realization. Now here's another graphic that says the same thing. It's a seesaw. So if the mind is faithful and steady, the force of spiritual instructions can lift the soul and maintain the soul in an elevated position. So, the seesaw. The next image is also a seesaw. But when there's spiritual instructions, that's on the left side of the diagram. There's a little handle where someone can sit. And the fulcrum is the mind. The mind is the seat where there's happiness or distress, pleasure, pain. I mean, it's on the sense level. Can we go back? Thank you. It's on the sense level, but the mind is reading happiness or distress, pleasure or pain. It tastes good, it doesn't taste good. It smells good, it smells nasty. It's happiness or distress. The place where it's read or felt is in the mind. And the mind is meant to become purified and made strong, firm, by spiritual instruction, cleansed of the contamination stuff and minimizing the modes of nature stuff of all the varieties, and become strong and pure. And when the mind is strong and pure, then on the other side, that's where we're sitting, the left side is the instructions of the spiritual master. The mind needs to become steady, and our material and spiritual well-being is lifted by the instructions of the spiritual master. Here goes. Same illustration, or same concept illustrated differently. On the left side of the seesaw, that's us, that little skinny guy over there, conditioned soul. And we're on one side of a seesaw. And in the middle is the mind. Now, if somehow, by instructions and training and discipline, the mind can become firm in faith and to a degree determined. There's degrees of determination, there's unsteadiness in there, but moving more towards the determination side, that's what the mind needs to do. And over on the other side of the seesaw comes hearing instructions. And when we hear spiritual instructions, consciousness is elevated when the mind is strong. Let's go back and do it again. That's us, the conditioned soul. And we're on this up and down thing, the seesaw. And the leverage point is the mind. If the mind can become somehow firm in faith, and with some determination to go to the spiritual side, that means I don't put myself at the center, even my mind at the center, but higher consciousness at the center. Now here comes instructions from the spiritual master, and immediately consciousness becomes elevated. And when consciousness is elevated, there's naturally spiritual qualities that follow. See it the other way. If someone is taking the position of one of elevated consciousness, like your example in the workplace, if you're in the example of one who is in elevated consciousness, but your qualities are not right, something's wrong. Something's missing. Because if I had been in higher consciousness and higher spiritual qualities, a lot of problems could be mitigated, if not solved, by that higher consciousness. Immediately. I mean, at least gradually, if not immediately. So here's the next. This is now for new people. Just make the Krishna connection. And it's not that you have to, one has to give up stuff, become the material, the mendicant, renunciate, sannyasi, tyagi kind of person. And the steps, this is, ABC, but this is for new people. It's chanting and being very careful with the foods that you eat. Take Krishna Prasadam and carefully study Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, and other transcendental literatures, ideally in the association of devotees. Now you're doing these things, so continue doing these things. And dancing, chanting, dancing, feasting, and philosophy, the 4 pillars. And it's the simple. Children can do, anyone can do. And the application part is, how clear we are about what the goal is, and how clear we are about what the instructions are to reach the goal. Let's say having a strong connection with spiritual teachings and spiritual teachers. And, foundational to all of this is our japa. And the quality, all of this, all of the elevation that you want can be evaluated in terms of how well you chant your japa every day. Positively, elevation. Sloppily or inattentively or distractedly, very slow. It's essential. And supposing I'm not, doing well in the essential, in the quality of my chanting japa, you stay with it. Because there isn't a better or there isn't another alternative. And then comes all the yabuts. And then, you have plan A, and you try your best to stay with plan A. When then the yabut comes along, you go to plan B, and then you get right back to plan A. And you do that with dedication, or with determination, with a sense of purpose or intention. And the intention factor needs to shift from it's all about me to it's about my relationship with Krishna. It's about Krishna. Because Krishna, living entities are given different situations, higher, lower, and middle, according to their aspiration or their free will. You follow? Why creation? Because people want to enjoy. Okay. Here's this, here's that, here's the other. And then people move between this and that and the other because of the karmas they do, which are the fruit of their free will choices. Just like your life situation right now. You have freedom. You can choose a number of different, not unlimited things, but a number of different things. You have freedom. And according to how you make your free will choices, there's reciprocation. We take responsibility for poorly made free will choices. In various ways we take responsibility. We bear the responsibility. But going forward in time, I can make my free will choices. And let me make my free will choices in alignment with the teachings of teachers, in terms of the relationship with teachers and the teachings and what the teachings are disclosing. The teachings are disclosing things that we can't know with our senses. We can't know what's beyond our senses through our senses. And the bhakti process is to serve adhoksaja, he who is beyond the senses, with our senses. Yato bhaktir adhoksaje. It sounds contradictory or it's puzzling. How are we to use that which is an instrument of action for that which is beyond the range of our instruments to detect? It's faith. That faith is vibrantly activated through sound. So you have it. You have faith, otherwise you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. You'd be doing something else. You're not doing it sufficiently to your satisfaction because there's distraction. The faith is not sufficiently strong. There's this, speaking now again, there's indifference. Ennui. This indifference towards, Krishna. And it's a feeling of dissatisfaction. But that feeling of dissatisfaction is there for everyone that doesn't have that strong spiritual connection. There's enjoyment, there's sense pleasure for some period of time, and then comes the opposite of the duality. And it's not happiness or to have relief from the misery. And it's a little less misery. When we walked into your house, I was going to comment, boy, it's really cool in here. And then we came upstairs and it's much warmer up here. So what? I mean, you can do something if you want to do something. But it's all temporary in any case. So what's important is, am I feeling comfortable bodily? Or in my mind feeling this or that? Happiness or distress, honor, dishonor? Or is there something more important than that? And if there's something more important to become clear at the intelligence level, here's an important teaching. Intelligence is awarded by whom? Supersoul. And Supersoul gives intelligence according to our free will. Supposing someone's a thief, Supersoul gives intelligence to the thief how to steal. Supersoul gives intelligence to the householder how to keep the thieves away. But supposing someone doesn't have interest in either, Supersoul will give intelligence for that. Or, maintain the responsible situation with my home and protecting my family and etc. But my whole absorption is not in that. My whole absorption is what's really important. And how do I know what's really important? Because it's beyond my senses to know. By hearing and faith in that which one has heard from one who has heard. And just do that, because that relationship with faith, and then the seesaw, the consciousness arises, spiritual qualities become decorations of a person who are higher. Krishna is the decorator. He has a big, good quality warehouse. He's very, very happy to decorate his devotees with good qualities. He's very happy to do that. So it's all about our relationship with Krishna. And if it's weak, that's due to a long-standing indifference. And when so I'm repeating myself now, when there's indifference, that means you're opening the door for affinity for the temporary. And that's our disease. Supposing, just take a worldly example, supposing you go to an Ayurvedic doctor, and they do their simple routine. They take your pulse, they ask you what your symptoms are, then take your pulse, and they ask you, are you feeling this, are you feeling that? They're like just probing to see if what their pulse reading is confirmed by your experience. The first time I went to an Ayurvedic doctor, I was checking out Ayurvedic doctors. He felt the pulse. He said, "You have a pain in your right knee?" I said, "No." He said, "You will." And sure enough. And so the Ayurvedic doctor takes the diagnosis, gives medicine and diet, and he can balance the doshas, and you can be in good health again. But you have to take the diet, have to stay, but supposing you don't follow the diet. You get the idea. There's something from our side. And a big part, there's a statement, I can't remember the source, where the efficacy of medical treatment has a lot to do with faith in the doctor. Negatively, if you don't have a lot of faith in the doctor, the efficacy is going to be less. Positive, if you have faith in the doctor, the efficacy is going to be greater. And there's 5 things that are, it's in the Vedic text that say like that, and one of them is guru. So supposing that Srila Prabhupada traveled, and supposing people didn't have such great faith in him, the effect that they were to gain from his association was less than those that at least in time developed strong faith in him. The efficacy, it varies according to faith. So for you to go from unsteady to steady requires that connection with Krishna through connection with those connected with Krishna. And you're a householder, you have a family and a career and stuff that you're involved with. So you're not a brahmachari living in a temple. You're a householder living in your home. So, what opportunities are there for sadhu sangha? It's the same for all the other householders. And you do those things. And primarily resting upon hearing. With faith. And then with faith means that when you hear something and it resonates, you do it. Now, supposing you're in this unsteady state, you sometimes and sometimes don't. And sometimes and sometimes don't. And sometimes and sometimes don't. That's unsteady. But you continue faithfully because I want to become steady from unsteady. And sadhu sangha will help. And sound vibration will clear. And then as you apply, I learned this from Ayurvedic. I developed faith in this doctor. Because my health was a wreck, and my health got like normal again. So that the realization from the application nourished faith. Faith is nourished by experience. Take teachings and apply the teachings with faith, and something's going to happen. If the diagnosis is right, the diet is right, the medicine is right, you do it, something's going to change. You get some experience, that nourishes your faith in the doctor. And then you go back to the doctor. Oh, tell me more. I've got this other pain or problem. Tell me about it. Okay, so then they adjust the medicine, they adjust the diet. It's relationship with faith. And now this is going back to spiritual teachings. That's the sound vibration that you need to connect with. And it has its practical. Spiritual teaching doesn't mean ignore that you have a body, ignore that you have a mind, ignore that you have a wife, ignore that you have children, ignore that you have a career, ignore that, be ignorant, just block everything else out. And just do spiritual things. That's not Bhagavad Gita's teaching. You do those things in relation with Krishna. And you have to change the channel. Yad karoshi, yad asnasi, yad jahosi, you do everything that's for Krishna. The consciousness behind the activity has to change. And the means to change the consciousness is put Krishna in the center. By association with those that have Krishna at the center and give you proper teachings and support. So to go from unsteady to steady, it's a journey. It can be a little uncomfortable journey because I'm still attached to the temporary. I have affinity for the temporary. And I'm not there yet. And it's uncomfortable. Because I want to get there, but I also have an affinity for the temporary. That's the discomfort zone. Let me stay the course because of faith. And have that, maintain good association and make your best effort to chant your mantra very attentively. Maximize that effort for the period of time that you do chanting every day. Put everything else to the side. You can wait till later, whatever it is, and do that. And that will lift everything else up. The Krishna at the center. Krishna the center of everything else. Say it conversely, don't do that, and everything will be very slow. Progress will be very slow. Unsteadiness will last for a long time. And it's easy to talk about it, then it's another thing to apply it. But the apply it is where it's going to happen. You want it to happen, so make sure you apply it. Now let's go to what the topic that your wife wanted to speak about. Some friend that has somebody that things aren't going. They have the history of some dedication, some loyalty, some careful practices, and then some misfortune, and misfortune lingered and even got worse, and so that's damaging their faith, and you're trying to help them get back into a faithful position, and they're saying, well, why? I mean, I'm abandoning Krishna because Krishna abandoned me. Something like that. I like things that are simple, and life generally is complex, not simple. But if you can lock into some simple things, then it makes life easier. The complicated becomes easier. So a simple thing is, a description, you can shut this off. A description of who is a friend. Somebody is your friend if they remind you of Krishna, and you're someone else's friend if you can remind them of Krishna. Now, being reminded of Krishna doesn't mean that somebody doesn't see that you have, just like you have a concern for some friends, and the in-laws of some friends. So it's not like that's part of you. You're a caring person that has relationships and they have relatives, and so it's not just your spirit soul. There's a whole package. There's a holistic picture of you or me or each one of us. But in intending to the holistic picture of self, the body, the mind, needs, physical, emotional, social, spiritual, but reminding you're being a friend of those people or others being a friend of you as well, attending to those things. Stay mindful, bring the attention to Krishna somehow. There's two verses that say this. One of them is right in the Bhagavatam, another is in Padma Purana, and Prabhupada kind of blended the two. Yena tena pakarena mana krishnena veshayat. Sarva vidi nisheda shur etoyoreva kinkara. The vidhis in the nishedhas, the do's and the don'ts, have one purpose. They're the servants of one purpose. Kinkara. They're the servants of one purpose. Mana Krishna Niveshayat. Bringing the mind to Krishna. So, I can make some suggestions of what you can say or do to help your friends' in-laws restore their faith. But the main essence is that you have faith. And it comes across because it's in what's in comes out. So your main service to your friend and their in-laws is your Krishna consciousness. Your wish to, you have it, otherwise you wouldn't be asking the question, but it comes out because it's when it's in. So the best way you can serve them is strengthen your faith. Then when you have strong faith, then you can see and feel the answers to why misfortune comes. Now, misfortune, according to Brahma Samhita, has two main sources. One is karma, and the other is Krishna's removing our affinity for the temporary. Affinity for the temporary again. You know Brahma Samhita verses? Yastvindra gopam atavindra mahosva karma Bhandanurupam padabhajanam atudoti Karmani nirdahintu kintu cha bhakti bhajam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Sounds nice. Here's what it means. Govinda is very kind. And he's kind in two different ways. From Indra, the king of heaven, down to the Indra Gop germ, it's right in the verse. He is giving the fruit of their karma in just manner. And for the devotee, he acts in this way, up to the very root of the interest in enjoying through fruitive activity. Krishna uproots that tendency, sometimes through the fire of ordeal. Now, if you understand that, not just know the verse and can explain the verse, but you have faith in Krishna that's who Krishna is, that's who Govinda is. You can help your friends in-laws by sharing teachings. Now, they may not want to hear it at this stage, who knows? But if they feel that you're a genuinely caring person, and you have a spiritual strength within you, they may listen. They may not. They may listen. So it depends. So, but your interest is remind them of Krishna. That's why you're asking the question, is you want to do that. But why is it for you to understand, or your friends who have in-laws that are going through this ordeal? Why is it happening? If you can understand, you can help your friends understand. If they can understand, perhaps they can help their in-laws understand. Where we take birth, we come into the material world for two reasons, according to Bhagavad Gita: Raga and Dvesha. And Krishna wants us to come back to him. But supposing we have some anchors in the temporary, so Krishna may show his special kindness by pulling those anchors. And somebody that has their anchors pulled may go, ouch, that was my favorite anchor. Now to understand that the ordeal is to help one get on the other side of trying to find happiness in the temporary. Now that's spiritual teaching. And something that I have found is helpful for people who are undergoing tribulation is a nice book written by a man who underwent far more severe tribulation than your friends' in-laws will ever go through. And that's a Jewish man who has survived a Nazi concentration camp. It's a celebrated book. You can write it down. You can take a look. There's quotes about it online. Man's Search for Meaning. Man's Search for Meaning. The author is Viktor Frankl. Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. And there's lots of wisdom in there because he survived because he had some strength. And the strength was his free will to choose in the face of obstacles that are just outside of his control. And he chose a path of service. Because of his profession, the service was to how to help people who are undergoing tribulation due to circumstances that are beyond their control. There are circumstances in life over which we have no control. There's nothing we can do. The wildfires that are going on in the western part of the States. What are you going to do? You evacuate, but your house burns or whatever it is. Firefighters are there, whatever. But there's not much you can do. You get out of the way. Supposing you can't get out of the way. Like supposing you're a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp. Or supposing whatever it is that your in-laws are going through, that are the tribulation, or your friends' in-laws. What do? Something is not taken from you, and that's your free will. The freedom to choose. And then you can choose that which the spiritual choice is to make that connection with Krishna stronger. Now, if the faith is weak, they may check out. Krishna, you're not being kind. You're putting me through tribulation. Rather than seeing what Krishna is doing, or at least the opportunity of seeing what Krishna is doing. Breaking, uprooting the tendency for the temporary. It's not easy when you're going through it. And that there's different tribulations. I started compiling, and it's a long list. I have a little document called Fire of Ordeal. And Shankadari is going to send me a little reminder to send you this Fire of Ordeal document. And it's something, depending upon your friends' in-laws, they may, not read it. They may read it. But it's helpful if they read it. And this other book is a secular book, and they may be able to read something that's a secular book. Man's Search for Meaning. How to handle it when there's situations that are just very, very, very difficult. There's nothing you can do about it. How to maintain your equilibrium and strength. But above all, your function is to remind them of Krishna. You just be their friend. And being a friend to somebody can be as simple as just putting your arm around them. And whatever. Here's a little story. It's written in Krishna book. It's in chapter 12 of Krishna book. When the boys were really little, they're still with calves, they're still 5 years old. They were playing, and Krishna suddenly disappeared into the forest. And they're really attached to Krishna. So they searched everywhere for Krishna, They couldn't find him. Then they heard a voice, Krishna's voice, said, "Whoever can find me first, I'll embrace you." So they went mad searching for Krishna, searching for Krishna, searching for Krishna. And once one boy found Krishna, Krishna went and embraced all the boys. They were in distress, but they didn't lose their attachment for Krishna because they were in distress. And he was strengthening their attachment for him and then embraced him. And that's God. That's the person who they should never go the other way from, but be eager for his embrace. Now it's a story, but it's actually Krishna's nature. He will sometimes do things like that. Now that's with cowherd boys, and your friends in-laws aren't cowherd boys. But Krishna's kind with everybody. He wants the ultimate happiness of everyone. And in different ways he helps. Okay. Well, we had a plan and we did something else instead of our plan. Let's see if there's some discussion. Wanted to be responsive to our host and hostess. It can be anything off topic, anything at all that you like. It's one of those kind of evenings.
Two of my friends are new actually.
Huh?
Two of my friends, they are new.
New?
Yeah. Yes, just invited them.
Okay. New to Krishna consciousness. You work together?
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. That's you two in the front here? Oh, you. Okay. Okay. Does this make a little bit of sense to you, what you just heard us discuss? Yeah? You have something? Yeah? Do we have a microphone?
No.
Okay, let's do without it then. We don't want a problem.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So when you were talking about the determination and the steadiness of the mind, it was just getting me thinking of when we read Srimad Bhagavatam and we see instances of like the gopis or other individuals who have such a strong attachment for Krishna in terms of like, my life would not be there without Krishna, like having that greatness of determination. But for us as living entities, sometimes it's very hard to, we might think it at some point, but it's hard to consistently have a determination like that.
Yes, it is. Agreed. What to do? That's the next.
Yeah.
Sadhu Sangha. And then you unpack that or put it back together again. And because Sadhu Sangha means lots of things. But in short, it's Sangat Sanjayate Kama. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you develop qualities like those with whom you associate. Very simple principle. If you stand near a fan, you get cool. You stand near a fire, you get warm. You associate with drunkards, you become a drunkard. You associate with scholarly people, you become scholarly. Or if you want to become scholarly, you go to a university and associate with scholarly people. It's more likelihood by enrolling in a university where there's scholarly people. And you want to become determined and associate with persons as much as you can. Associate with persons who are determined. And one of the ways of doing that is through sound. Through writings of those that have Dridhavrata, very strong determination. Spiritual determination. And so in response to your question, another is when speaking about the cowherd boys, that very nice section, chapter 12 of Canto 10, Shukadeva Goswami is describing what they do together. And he steps back and goes into this spontaneous expression. How many lifetimes of pious activities have these boys undergone to get this status? They're not just worshiping, they're playing. They're not just meditating and seeing the form of God within. They're rolling on the ground and wrestling with him and jumping, and how such intimate association. How have they become so qualified? So it's determination over an extended period of time, with a degree of intimacy. That's another important part of developing determination, is relationship. Yeah. Bhakti, the essence of bhakti, or loving service, bhakti yoga, is relationship with Krishna and, sadhus, those in relation to Krishna. And when those relationships become strong, the determination becomes strong. We can sacrifice for another person far more than we're just doing something on our own kind of, dilly-dallying or dabbling in something. There's so much more focus when it's a sacrifice for someone you deeply care about, and you stay focused because you deeply care about them. So relationships take time to cultivate. To deeply care about someone takes time to be with that person, and so forth and so on. And then you can sacrifice in a steady, determined way. And bhakti is the highest state of that in relation to Krishna. So it's gradual. Stay in good association, sadhu sangha, and do with sadhus what sadhus do, bhajana kriya. And then the obstacles gradually diminish. The focus becomes stronger. Real feelings at the heart level. Then it becomes spontaneous. Anyone else? We have more people over here. The ladies section. Yes.
So, I have a question that, if I want to help someone to come to Krishna consciousness, if they do have faith in God, if they're really good at education and everything, how do I help them? Because every single day I pray to Krishna that I wish that they can come in, to Krishna consciousness and practice. And then I just want to help them. But if I try to, because I'm younger than everyone else, and then so I don't have that potential to say you can do this, you can do this. I don't know how to say it to people who are older than me. And
I get it. So somebody is older than you, that's not an obstacle. But some of us, when I was growing up, I was always associating with people older than me. Always. Maybe you're that kind of person too. Maybe you're not that kind of person. But I didn't see it as an obstacle, because when there's a likeness of feeling or interest, and a warmth and friendliness between yourself and another person, that's the bridge that makes walking together in a wholesome direction possible. It's not age is not the barrier. It's relationship. And with relationship, the fabric of relationship that will help you be able to, or facilitate you to be able to extend bhakti to others, is the strength of the relationship and the strength of your own bhakti. And, and customizing things according to the person and what they like. Some people like food, some people like music, some people like reading, some people like, and as much as you can make yourself available according to their liking, then they'll appreciate. They understand me and they're molding their activities to conform with or match my interests. So it's not like you have to abandon yourself, but specific to helping somebody make steps towards a bhakti life, find a way that they have some interest and provide that resource. And it may not even be you, it could be somebody else that's better at music than you are, or better at painting than you are, or better at something than you are. But you're being their friend. And age is not a barrier. It's a little bit like this, the question of their friends' in-laws. When as much as you can be a spiritual, radiating joy kind of person, contentment and satisfaction kind of person, when that is within you, it's very attractive. A person who is very genuine and very sincere and consistently happy, then that's very attractive. And then whatever it is that you say is going to have more impact on another person than if you're kind of dragging around. And you're very flexible because you value the person and the relationship with the person, and they feel that from you. And so it kind of go in. And you're customizing it to match their personality and their, whatever it is that they're going through. Anything else? Yes.
Transition from
I think I'm going to have to repeat the questions because of the online thing. Go ahead.
transition from unsteady bhakti to steadiness. When trying to depend on Krishna, and as you were talking about chanting, when that chanting is very attentively done, then rest of the things can be effective. So, but when I'm chanting, I don't know, somehow, previously, whatever the impressions that are formed, at that moment, I might not have reacted to those situations, like when my feelings were hurt and all. But those things are coming now when I'm chanting. So is that something that I was feeling that maybe at that moment I've tolerated it but not really forgiven. So in that kind of situation, but I really wanted to pay attention to the holy name and not wanted to pay attention to Krishna, that relationship, my relationship with Guru and Krishna. So I'm not able to understand what is going on, that whether I'm feeling that I have to be respected, or what is that that is there. I'm not able to understand.
I don't know how I'm going to repeat that question. For the people, the listening audience, it's a little bit of a meandering question, but in shorter terms, when chanting, sometimes my mind goes to situations that happened in the past that, on the one hand, I was thinking I was being very tolerant and forgiving, and the other hand, they keep lingering and appearing. So why is that continuing, and what to do? Well, why isn't necessarily that you're doing something wrong, or there's some anartha in your heart that is blocking. It's not necessarily like that. My understanding of thoughts that arise in the mind have something to do, or a lot to do, with purification. And here's a visual for me, worked for me. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, there was a pond. We had a Gurukul property in Lake Huntington, New York, and over on the side there was a pond. And I noticed, as just looking out over the pond, every now and then a little bubble would rise to the surface, kind of hang out at the surface, and then poof, it would pop. So I figured out what that was. It was something organic in the mud, and it was creating some kind of gas as it was fermenting or decaying or whatever. And the gas would create a certain pressure, and at a certain point it would protrude through the mud, wiggle its way up to the surface of the water, and then merge with the air. So supposing you took a stick and started stirring the mud, and then all kinds of bubbles would come to the top, because it wasn't waiting for the pressure to build up, but it would rise to the top. So our bhakti life is a little bit like that. There's impressions, and if you weren't a devotee, the impression would rise in the form of a desire to something, liking, not liking, do, stay away from, and you would rule your life. The impressions, the past impressions, would rule your present life, your feelings and your actions, the mind and the body. And in spiritual life, we're relieving the mind from those impressions, and they may come, unexpectedly, and it's just part of the purification process. And when those impressions come to your mind, you can celebrate. I'm getting relieved of those past impressions. Now, there may be ones that occur repeatedly, and that may be something that you need to pay attention to. That's something that's unresolved, and it needs to be resolved. And there's different ways to resolve things that are unresolved, depending on the thing. But otherwise, you just, thank Krishna for relieving you from having to live your life where that's everything. The past and the emotions connected with the past, and here comes that emotion. It's coming into my mind now, and then I'm absorbed in or obsessive about that, whatever that is. And it can be, good times and bad times, both, and past impressions. And then, so stay with Krishna, and you don't give too much heed to those thoughts. You stay with Krishna. Tang satiksha swabharata. Okay. Anything else? Yes?
Question on chanting. some time ago I used to have good in better chanting. I used to chant more, and whenever I get time I used to go for chanting. It's okay, I guess. But lately it's been a struggle. The quality is clearly has come down. But I'm not even not able to chant extra rounds. It's very 16. So I'm thinking that the reason is that I certainly could be making some offenses. I'm not able to understand where I'm making offenses. What kind of offenses? Is it a deity worship offenses or mental offenses or offending devotees? I want to get out of this and come back to my previous level. So how do I go beyond this?
The narrative is reasonably standard. I mean, the particulars are yours, but the narrative, the flow of the narrative is reasonably standard. Using language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur when enthusiasm grows cold. So enthusiasm in the beginning is more purposeful and focused. And as we know from Bhagavad Gita, 4 types of pious people render service unto Krishna. So you and me are probably in the category of pious people that render service to Krishna. And then when that purpose slackens, or the enthusiasm becomes cold, using his term, then that's the down. So it's the recommendation I would say is not necessarily some offense or something like that, just to restore your enthusiasm. Now, one of the steps before restoring enthusiasm is yearning to restore enthusiasm. And then it comes, circles back to the sadhu sangha answer. And the major part for sadhu sangha is hearing. This is sound. And it can also be just simply rendering service. So go out of your way. If there's something that's been if there has been something in the category that's offense, the antidote to the offense is to render service. So go out of your way. Not to say that you're not serving other people, but add the element of purposefulness in serving others. In a very conscious way. At least, here's something that I learned from one of my godbrothers, Sridhar Swami, Prabhupada disciple. It's a long story, but short. For 10 years, in his upper pocket, he kept the 3x5 card. And one day I saw him marking that 3x5 card, and I asked him what he was doing. And he said, long ago, I realized that I was proud. I have a high IQ, and I always think I'm smart. And I know that's, whether I'm smart or not, it's the pride that needs to be curbed. So I made a decision, and I've been doing it every day for 10 years. 5 times a day, because I pull out the card and do something that I'm consciously taking a humble position to do some service. And mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just do it consistently, where is humble service. If you cultivate consciously, purposefully, deliberately the mood of humble service, it's likely to spill over to things when you're not even consciously thinking, I'm going to do some humble service for this devotee in this particular situation. It becomes part of your character, abhyasa, the cultivation of that quality of being in service to others. That's one of the 5 most potent things in all of bhakti. So if there is something in that category of some offense, that's a good way to check it. Antidote. But then, as far as enthusiasm specifically for chanting, sadhusanga. Learn those things. Learn standard prayers by our acharyas about chanting. Namastika is fantastic. I spoke about it, and a 10-year-old girl just sent me a recording of her singing Namastika, and she's learned the song, learned the prayers, and she sings them regularly now. So, she's just a 10-year-old girl. It's just she likes singing. And so it's fine. So you're not a 10-year-old girl, but you can do something that you take the association of those elevated souls that do have a taste and attraction, absorption in chanting, and you follow them. Those are 2 suggestions. The sadhu sangha suggestion and the service to the Vaishnavas suggestion. If you think that there has been if you think that there has been somewhere along the way, you don't know what it is, offense to the devotees, then those that you regularly associate with, you can do this. You can, sincerely and honestly, there's some things that I have done that have created disturbance for you. I'd like to hear. And they may not want to tell you because they may think that you're not going to want to hear it. So that's not a necessary thing, but it's an option. Or let it be known if there's something that can remain confidential, but go to so and so, and that so and so can tell. You can tell so and so something. Anyway, you can think creatively if that's a concern. You actually think you may have offended devotees. Yes.
How should we increase the quality of our chanting?
How should we increase the quality or quantity? Quality. There's volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes of discussion on that topic. I mean, hundreds of hours. So, for what's fresh in my mind is just this recent Festival of Holy Name, and that was the topic. Well, the one before that was also the topic. The one before that was the topic. Taste for the Holy Name. But one of the topics that was in this past one was indifference. And get on the other side of indifference. Listen to the Festival of Holy Name recordings, and you'll get an answer to your question. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.